that there was one customer and I completely, like, I wrote down the pattern she wanted, the thread color, everything, and I just had this other vision in my head. And I don't know what I did because I've only ever done it once.
Yeah.
And I didn't even look at our intake form.
Yeah.
It has all the details on there, and I just got on the computer. I'm going to do this pattern and this thread, and I did it. And I went to bed that night, and I was just laying there, and I'm like, oh, no.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. I am so excited for our guest today because I've probably talked about her 800 times, and you guys probably think I'm crazy and that I'm probably making her up, but it's not true because she's right here in person. My mom, Michele, aka Mama Sweet Pea, is here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm real.
Yeah,
I'm
she's
really
here.
real.
See, I'm not crazy.
I'm real.
Well, I'm so excited to finally have you on the podcast. Because I talk about you all the time, but also because you are really the whole reason why I even have a creative whisper in my bones. Because my whole life you've been sewing and creating and crafting and so much DIY in our house all the time. All that. But yeah, like, how did your sewing and crafting journey start?
So my grandma Branson made, like, from day one, she made my baby blanket, which I still have. I think some of my clothes, and she made all my doll clothes and my Barbie clothes. Still have all that.
Yeah.
And she was a phenomenal seamstress. So I mean, my doll has a fur-lined, neck with buttons and pleats, and I mean they're beautiful, beautifully made. And so I'd spend my summers at the ranch with them, and she taught me how to sew basically. And then I took home ec in school back when you actually cooked and sewed and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And my mom was a seamstress, so she taught me stuff. And then in high schoal, I was on drill team, and we had to make our own uniforms. So that was fun. And, prom dresses and all that stuff. And then I just always sewed. And then my friend Kim got me a class, because she was a quilter, so she got me a class at the quilt shop to learn how to quilt. And I'm like, well, it's like, whatever. I was kind of like, well, that's cool. But I'm like, I know how to sew. She's like, no, quilting's different. And I was like, is it? She's like, it is. I'm like, okay. So I take the class, get all the stuff, make my first quilt. It is different. It's a whole different ball game. Yes, I know how to sew, but anyway, a lot more to quilting. So took the class and then saw the fabrics and just fell in love. And so, yeah, here I am today.
Here we are.
And now here I am. I never dreamed I'd have my own business and doing all this. So yeah, it's super fun.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
I just love, I love that, this is such a generational thing, and, it may have started somewhere, different, but how it can, grow and change, and then, now we have this, and now we've got, the grandbabies, your grandbabies, my nieces and nephew, and, we've got this business that could eventually be something that they want to do, or something we can show them, and so it's, the same... Yeah. The same thing, but it's also different. It's just taking it further and giving them an opportunity to do something cool with it too, or I don't know, there's just so many possibilities, but I love that. And fun. I think for me anyway, just always having it around, I always knew oh, I can make stuff,
right?
I may not have been the best at sewing because I couldn't even sew a straight line, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this.
You did. You were so adamant, and it was funny because your dress for prom, all those pictures that, or all those clothes that we did, all the dresses. I think we still have them. Mm-hmm. And you were, I'm not going to sew. I'm not going to sew. So when you told me you started quilting, I was like, excuse me, what?
I know. I was like, my mom's going to.
Wow. Okay. I see how it is.
I know. I told the girls too. I was like, my mom's going to kill me, They're like, what? Why? I'm like, because she's been trying to get me to sew since I was a newborn, and all of a sudden I'm sewing quilts. She's going to be like, what? all my hard work is going to be taken by these people.
No, but I get it. Like, look at the fact, it's amazing
I
now.
know.
It's not what it, when I grew up, it was calico cotton from, the country store, whatever.
Right. Well, and I
And
think
it's
too, like,
changed so much.
yeah, like, so people have that idea still. I mean, we
Right.
even talk to clients who are like, so I see your pictures, like, is this really what quilting is now? And you're like, we're like, yeah, this is it. Like,
that's amazing.
there are still, lots of traditional quilts being made and lots of people
Mhm.
preserving those traditions, and that's fantastic. But I also think there's so much space for exploration now, and space for all kinds of quilting, and
Yeah.
so I just think, like, this has been the most fun thing I've ever done. Like, start a business with you and
it's so exciting.
get to do this and, like, have a creative outlet, but also be creating for other people and, like, sharing our love of this with them, and
Mhm.
like, getting to spread that, like, love and beauty in the world is, like, just so fulfilling.
Yeah, you're making this unique, one-of-a-kind thing that they're going to have. I mean, like I said, I still have my baby blanket. Like,
Yeah.
I'll never get rid of it. I have,
Yeah.
when my grandma was sick and, like, her last year of life, that yo-yo quilt, like, we
Yeah.
worked on that together, like,
Yeah.
and it's, I'll always have it.
Yeah. Like, whatever's going
So-
on is, like, imbued in that quilt.
Yeah.
And, like,
Yeah.
and then you always see that and have those memories, and it's, like, encapsulated in that thing. Even
Yeah.
though it's, like, it's just fabric, but it's the memories, and,
Yeah.
I love
Oh,
it.
yeah. Yeah.
So, as a creator, what is your favorite part about the process of quilting?
So for me, like, I took the class, learned how to make a quilt top, and then I tried quilting on my home sewing machine, and I wanted to throw it out the window. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. So then I think did we go to the quilt shop and watch Ben and Jeff use the long arm machine? I can't remember. I think that was kind of my first experience of...
Yeah, we were there when Jen was long arming one time.
Okay.
And then they had taken the classes,
Okay.
or she had convinced Beth to take the class,
Yeah.
and Miranda hadn't yet. Yeah, anyway.
Okay. Well, and then Kim and her mom ended up buying
Oh, right.
a long arm machine, and I remember just going over there and watching, just fascinated. And so we ended up taking the class. We would rent at the quilt shop to do our long arming. And it just seemed like a pain. But that quickly became my favorite part, was creating this design on this fabric and making the quilt come alive. So I'm like, well, this is what I like. This is my favorite part.
Yeah.
And most people are like, I hate that part.
Yeah.
Hate it. So then, we did that for a while and realized how much money we were actually spending at the quilt shop.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
And it was like, I want one of these machines. Well, yeah, you know how much they are.
Yeah.
So, and then I think it was Abe who was like, well, you guys should start a business. And I'm just like, what? And it freaked me out. And I was like, it's the cost, And
Yeah.
he's like, what's the worst that could happen? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I own a quilting machine. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, right?
So, yeah, so we bit the bullet and did it. And I mean, I don't mind the whole process, but I think long arming it and just seeing that come to life and getting to, it's like the one you did last night, like seeing that pattern, it just brought it to life. So,
Yeah.
that's
really
kind
did.
of where which hence why we do what we do.
Why we have a business where
Yeah.
we long arm for
Yeah.
people, because
Exactly.
it's the fun part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, after we took that class, because it was crazy, because we signed up, and I was in Dubai for, like, the first week of January, or, like, part of the second week, whatever. Like, the first chunk of January, that's when I first went to Dubai to teach those teacher workshops.
Right.
And I literally came back, and then that next day, was it? We had the long arming class.
Yes. Yeah.
I was, like, beyond jet lagged, because it's it's like an 11-hour difference, and I was just like, I don't care, we're doing this. And then afterwards I was like, I love this. It was so fun.
Yeah.
It was so fun. And, like, yeah, just going to the quilt shop and trying to rent time and make sure you have enough time to get a quilt done, and kind of feeling like you had to rush because you're like, oh, my 2 hours is almost up or whatever it was. And I didn't like that part, but once we got our own, I was like, okay, this is way more fun.
Mm-hmm. And having the computer is great because it just saves our back, for one thing, having to lean over that machine all day and not being able to walk away.
Right.
So, I'm so glad we added that part. That was good.
Yeah, me too, because I think that definitely is a lifesaver. Mm-hmm. And it creates beautiful, consistent designs, which I think is, I mean, I love the little imperfections in quilts because I think it speaks to the humanness of the whole process, but also like being able to have like a gorgeous, perfect pantograph like stitched out on your quilt is kind of like, it like erases all that.
It does. It really is. Yeah.
You don't even see that anymore. You just see the beautiful stitching, and it does. It gives the quilt a personality. Yeah. I think, like, you know, quilt patterns are great and they have their own kind of voice too, but I think it can really, like you said, come alive with the right pantograph and all the different thread colors. And I'm a person who likes to just like, let's color this thing up. Let's use every color thread. Let's make it bright and obnoxious. Yeah. But that's so fun. Mm-hmm. So owning a long arming machine, like, I know it's huge because I work on it every day, but how was the process of like putting it together and starting using it?
Yeah, that's intimidating because it, you know, this freight truck shows up and drops all these boxes off on your doorstep and you're like, they're like 14 feet long, but you know, and I'm just like, so like, okay, this is going to be fun. So you get a team and you take it to wherever you're going to put it together. And I'm not technical, so I didn't do that part. So I don't know how it was putting it together. I mean, I helped a little bit. And then it was just, you know, it's like, okay, here's this thing. Yeah. No manual, no, I mean, there's a manual to put it together and everything, but it's like the computer program, it's like, here you go.
Good luck. Yeah.
I'm like, how do I use it? I'm like, so there's like, was there 5 or 6 YouTube videos on the basics, like this is how you set it up, this is what, and I'm like, okay, I can do that, like that's fine. And so, I mean, you know, we practiced a lot, right? And then it was like, okay, then we got our first customer, and I was sweating bullets. I'm like, oh my gosh, this just became real. I was like, oh no, I don't like, it's just that whole unknown, right? And I'm kind of a perfectionist. I like, if I'm going to do something for somebody, it's going to be the best, right? Yeah. And so I was like, okay, and it turned out fine, and she loved it. It was great. Like, she took it to her grandson and sent us pictures, and oh my god, and she's still a customer today. Like, so clearly it did okay. Yeah. And there's still so much that I don't even know how to do on it. I need to go to take a week-long class and learn all the, I mean, I can do custom stuff, but they're, you know, I mean, and I've done a few design, you know, make your own design. And so I'm definitely by no means a master at it. Yeah. And there's so much more to learn, which I love. There's always new things now, right? Before it was just, you know, you make your 9 patch or whatever and your quilt is done. So I love the creativity of it. I always love fabric. Yeah. You know that. Yeah.
Oh boy, do I. Yeah. We have a room full of it.
Yeah. And so every time a new line comes out, I'm like, you know, gotta have that. Yeah. So luckily we've got, you know, Abe and Dad, they're our technical support, and you're good at it too. I'm like, I just want to create. I want to sew and create.
You're like, you guys fix it, so I can just keep doing this thing.
It's like, I have to do invoice. I have to do what? I have to what? Like, I don't want to do that part. So, yeah. Luckily, we have a team, and we you know, kind of share that load, so that's nice. But yeah, I just want to be in that studio creating. This is my passion. Always has been, and
you've always created. Like, there's never a time that I can remember that you weren't making something, or like, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's like, you know, like, oh, we're gonna make our own whatever, like,
yeah,
almond milk, kids, like, you know, or like, what? Or, you know, always like homemade stuff, whatever it was, food or clothing, or, you know, we're always changing. I was always changing the decor in my room. I'm like, I need new curtains. And so we'd go buy fabric and you'd make me new curtains. And then I'd be like, I want new curtains. You're like, ugh. I'm sure, just like, okay, seriously.
That's all good.
But yeah, like, I always had, like, I'd have these little visions of, like, dress up clothes I wanted, and you would make it for me, and doll clothes, and same thing. I think it, like, added a little sparkle of magic to my childhood, because I just, like, knew creations could come to life, and it was like, you made that happen, and I was like, oh, it's really special. But, and then getting to, like, do this with you now.
Oh, I know. I never would have dreamed, like...
I know.
Okay, you never even wanted to sew, and now here we have it's crazy, yeah.
I know, and I think garment sewing is so different. Like, that scares me so bad. I don't know if I'll ever do that. But also, we're venturing into, like, trying to make quilted jackets. I'm like, well, it looks easy enough because it's, you know...
Not so structured, yeah.
Yeah, but then I'm, like, watching you make it, and I'm like, oh, maybe not yet. Maybe I'll just let you do it. It's
I'll think about that later.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that.
Yeah.
Totally get that.
But I do remember a time when, like, we had the machine, like, less than a year, and it was, like, acting crazy. We basically had to replace the whole thing.
Oh,
like,
my gosh, yeah. So every time we'd advance a row, it would move to the left a quarter of an inch. And I'm like, I know. Like, you know, by the time you get down 8 rows, you're 2 inch, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, so it was driving me crazy. So I kept calling the company. It has a lifetime warranty.
Yeah.
Which is why we bought a new one, and we, you know, it's got all the bells and whistles. So I'm like, this should not be happening. So I'd call and, you know, troubleshoot. We replaced pretty much the whole machine, and then finally got down to the carriage, and that was it. It was a hardware issue of some sort. Got that, and haven't had a problem since.
Yeah. I sure remember, like, it was months of just, like, troubleshooting, trying to, because it started at the old house, and then moved here, and it was still happening. So it was like, even in a big move and, like, disassembling and then reassembling the entire thing, it was like, nope, still not working right. You guys were like,
like, it's humidity. I'm like, no, I have a humidifier going. I have you know, it's like because you know, every possible thing we tried, and it was so frustrating.
Yeah.
And then they finally sent that, and now it's. But I mean, they were on it till it got fixed, which was nice. But, you know, and there are those things. Things happen, and mistakes happen. Well, thank God we've never ruined a quilt.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh,
so,
I know. I wouldn't be able to live with myself.
I wouldn't either. So, you know, there is a little bit of that anxiety. It's kind of gone now, but at the beginning it was like, oh, my gosh, like, I know how much time and effort and cost and everything went into making this, and I don't want to mess it up.
Right? Like, that's the terrifying thing. Like, you're taking someone else's art and you're putting your own art into theirs, but then you're like, what if they hate it? I still kind of get that twinge of like, oh my God, they're gonna hate it, and it's gonna be terrible, and I'm gonna have to take out every single stitch. And, like, thankfully, like you said, nobody has complained about the work we've done or not liked something.
I remember that there was one customer, and I completely, like, I wrote down the pattern she wanted, the thread color, everything, and I just had this other vision in my head. And I don't know what I did, because I've only ever done it once.
Yeah.
And I didn't even look at our intake form.
Yeah.
It has all the details on there, and I just got on the computer, I'm going to do this pattern and this thread, and I did it. And I went to bed that night, and I was just laying there, and I'm like, oh, no. It was like, I totally did the wrong color, I'm like, oh my God. And it wasn't anything like what she wanted. It was like, oh my God. Like, I have to call and tell her what I did.
Yeah.
Or it's that, and it was like a queen size quilt. I'm like, or take out, or spend the next literal month taking all that out. So I was like, well, I'm going to call her, I'm going to have her come look at it, and I'm going to offer to do it for free.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, and then if she doesn't like it, I'll take, I'll make it right?
Yeah.
Whatever that's going to detail. So she comes over, and I show it to her, and she's like, oh my God, it's beautiful. I'm like, well, here's what happened. I'm like, you notice it's not the pattern you chose? She's like, well, look like it, but I'm like, she's like, I love it. She's like, I like this more than what I picked out. And I was like, oh, thank God. She's like, I love it. It's perfect. I'm like, well, I'm not going to charge you. Yes, you are. Oh my God, I'm going to give you extra. Like, it was amazing. I was like, okay, all right.
Oh.
Like, I didn't sleep that night. I was so.
I wouldn't either.
Oh, anyway.
Well,
yeah.
that like vulnerability of having to say, I messed up is like so stressful. But I think too, like, just the fact, I mean, I know it, but also just knowing that, like, we will do whatever we need to do to make anything right, and that, like, we do work with as much integrity as humanly possible, because we do value this. Like, we're not just in it to make a bunch of money. I mean, that'd be cool, but, like...
Right.
But we love this art so much that, like, we highly value how people feel about what we help them create. And so...
Right.
I think hopefully our customers feel that and know that about us. Like, hopefully they feel the excitement we feel when we're giving them their quilts back. Like, look how pretty it is. Like, the excitement that's there. And I think they do, because I think they wouldn't come back if they didn't feel like we were going to take care of their baby. Like, because they're handing that over to us, and we're like, we promise we'll take really good care of it. Yeah, I did that too, though. I think you were away for a few days, and so I was like, oh, I'll just long arm the stuff that's here. And same thing, you told me the pattern and the color to do, and I was like, okay, great. And then I did something completely different, and I was like, same panic. I was like, I'm sweaty. I don't know what to do. Oh my God, I'm dying. And you were like, it's going to be fine. And it turned out so cute. So I was like, well, it looks really cute. Like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And of course, so we had to be like, well, we're real sorry that this happened. But she was like, oh, actually, I love it. And, but yeah, same thing. That's the only time I've ever done that. Just one time.
Well, most people are like, you do. She's like, this is what you do. I trust you. Do whatever you want. Yeah. So I would say 75% of our customers are that way. They're just true. Like, here we go. Do your magic.
They're like, I don't know. What do you think? I'm like, I don't know. Like, but also, I think, again, we look at the overall quilt. We think about the person who's bringing it to us, and like who they are and what they're going to like too. So we kind of having that relationship with the clients, I think, is really important too, because then we can sort of tune our choices to what we think they'll like and appreciate.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
One thing that I normally ask guests is, like, if they have tips or, things that they want to share with quilters. And I know you have a hot tip, and we've been talking about you sharing it on this podcast.
So for borders, you obviously want to square up your top. And to the best of your ability, I know Grandma always said, God's the only thing that's perfect. Quilts, it's never going to be perfect, so just go with it. I'm like, okay. So you're going to measure your sides. I typically add my border to the sides first, and then I do the top and the bottom, but however you want to do it, or if you have setting corners, whatever. So you're going to measure that. You're going to cut your border to that length, and you're going to pin it from, you're going to pin both ends, pin it in the middle, so fold it, find the middle, and then you're going to stretch it however much it needs to be stretched, and you're going to sew it on there. You're going to think it's too short. For the love of God, do not add fabric to it.
We've seen what happens.
I've seen so many borders where you've got this, 1 inch. I just added, and then it's too much, and then it makes it wavy. It needs to be taut. So you're going to sew that on there. Yeah, a lot of times you're stretching just a little bit. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, I promise. And then you do your top and bottom. Again, same thing. You measure both. Like if I'm off maybe a half an inch on whatever, I'll go in the middle and do like, 1/4 inch or whatever. Stretch it, get it on there, square it up. And I promise it works. I've hundreds of quilts, and it works. And the problem is when people add that, they don't realize, like you said, it's got to lay flat. It's got, because we're pinning the backing and then laying the batting, and then we're leveling out the top of the quilt. We're stitching it down, right? And then, so then you're slowly going down and advancing the quilt. And if it's wavy at all, it typically shows in the borders, because the further out it goes, right, it gets a little...
It's like a little here, a little more volume in it here, and it works its way down, and then when you get to the bottom, though, well, because like trying to stitch down the sides as you advance it, you're like, well, now there's all this weird fabric sticking out that's like not laying flat because it wasn't squared up and done.
Yeah, and they weren't stretching it enough to. So yeah, please put your borders on that way.
Yeah,
it's just a little trick. I literally took a class on it because I was having issues with it.
Yeah,
and I mean, I've even, like a couple of months ago, I had a quilt that I made, and I'm like, I don't even know what happened.
What did I do? Yeah.
So, you know, and I don't want to have folds in my quilt. I don't want to, I mean, I've seen at the quilt shop, remember that one we saw, it was like, oh my God.
It was so
like, it was
scary.
so bad. So, I mean, I'll go in and undo a seam and, you know, take it, you know, fix it.
Yeah. Tuck it where you can.
But, I mean, it happens. It's like, you know, none of us are perfect. Nothing's perfect, right? So it happens. But that is a good way to put your borders on so that...
Avoid that extra volume.
Yeah. Please don't, if you... Oh.
Yeah, don't add.
Was it measure...
Twice,
cut once.
Yeah.
So measure it. Trust that. Pin it. I'm a firm believer in pinning. Especially especially borders. You have to pin it. And then you just kind of pull it. You know, it's got... Batiks are harder because they don't stretch at all. So you really have to be spot on with those. But yeah, that's kind of my soapbox.
Yeah, your
lesson
hot button issue.
as a long armor, that is probably the biggest issue I see. Are wavy borders.
I was gonna say the same thing, because like, there's been times where I'm like, I come to you because I've been working on something and you're doing something else. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, and you're good about finding a seam or finding a spot where you can, like, you know, open the seam up and lay it over farther so it kind of lays flatter, and working it in. Like, you're really good with that. So I've been kind of taking lessons from you on that. But yeah, and I've done it too, like, because I struggled. My rifle paper jelly roll race I did, and I did 3 borders. So I did like a 4-inch border, and then like a 1-inch border, and then a 6-inch border. Yeah. And it was wavy as fuck. Like, the bottom, I had a huge fold in the bottom border.
Well, and anything you do on a bias, like, it's stretchy. It's just the way the fabric is. And so that can be challenging too. Yeah. And if you're doing a bias seam on your borders,
which I never do, because I know how stretchy they are.
They get super stretchy. I know some people love them. So it can be a challenge. Yeah, I'm just gonna put it that way. It can be a challenge.
But I think it works though. Like, if you measure, and at first I was like, what? This is crazy, because they're different. You know, it is. You're going to be slightly off. Yeah. Seam allowances aren't perfect as much as you try. Yeah. Lord knows I've tried. But yeah, when you measure it to the width or length of that side specifically, and you pin the heck out of it, you stretch it so that it goes along, then it lays flat. Like,
and that's why you pin it too. So you're giving an even stretch instead of trying to, I gotta pull an inch at the end.
Yeah, you're not just like pulling the whole time. It's, you stretch it before so it's all laid out. Then you sew it down as it is, and it works.
It really does.
It's like such a simple thing, but it makes the biggest difference.
But I had literally never heard anything about that until I actually took that class, and I was like,
yeah,
makes so much sense.
Well, and I was doing that that first quilt I made for Swanson with the little X's in it. Yes. That one had so much sashing, and I was struggling. And you were like, you just got to measure it to the width of the space that I'm like, but it says this. You're like, I know, but you measure your spot and then cut it and then stitch it to that. And then I was kind of like, okay, I'll try it, and it worked pretty good. So I was like, maybe she's right.
Well, and the other thing you can do, like, if I get a customer, you're measuring everything, because, we do lots of math. Yeah. Measuring all the things too. before you load the quilt. And if I have a quilt that's super wavy, like if you quilt it really dense, it tends to absorb some of that waviness and some of the extra bulk. So that's kind of how another way you can get around it is to do a dense pattern, because it just kind of works with the fabric. And
right. Well, because isn't it like for every, I don't know, like every row of stitching you lose like a certain amount of,
well, so like when
that is something different.
That's for when we're doing the designs. So for the length of the quilt, like I think it's for every 3 feet you could actually gain like a half an inch for every 3 feet that we're quilting. So like if you do a 90-inch quilt, like I will only do my length at like 91.
Okay.
So, you've got you're going over on the top, and then you still have enough on the bottom because you've gained an extra inch or so.
Oh, okay.
Or 2. And it kind of depends on the pattern too, but
you're gaining.
You're gaining
because
a little bit.
Stitching it down and kind of stretching the fabric maybe?
I think it's because of the computer program. I don't know. I just remember doing an online YouTube video, and they were saying that as you advance, about every 3 feet, you gain about quarter to half an inch. Like, and I've noticed that. I'm like, why is there so much at the bottom? It's like, because it's a queen size quilt, and
right.
I didn't account for that. So
that's good to know too. Just as far as like if you are setting up your own pantograph, just like knowing that you're going to have extra at the bottom that you need to account for.
And you do. When you're setting up your pattern, you're going over, they typically tell you an inch or 2 on each side and at the bottom, because no quilt is perfect, right? So,
I mean, I don't know.
Sometimes, mine are, but that's fine.
Perfection.
But, you load it, we get it on there as straight as possible, right? But then you start going down, and sometimes it kind of goes to the right or goes to the left, and you want to make sure your pantograph is wide enough to cover be
on the whole quilt.
Yeah. Just a little forgiving of, movement. We'll call it movement.
The flow of the fabric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. And if you're doing a custom quilt, that's totally different, but
Okay. Yeah, borders. So. I think I agree with you. That has been the biggest challenge as far as like working on other people's quilts, is when something like that comes up, and then you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
Now I have to do this whole thing to fix this person's quilt, and you don't want to mess it up, and you don't want to tell them their quilt is ugly. Because it's not that. It's just ugly. It's just a real flappy, and you're like, what do I do with all this extra fabric? Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely ways that you've found that
because you want to keep it square. Like, you could yank on that thing, but then the bottom's going to be 3 inches wider than the rest of the quilt, and it's like, well, you don't want that either. That's awful. You want your quilt square. Yeah. So you got to take it in. Yeah. Somehow, so you either find a seam and just
tuck it in. Yeah, and it usually works out, because then it'll get stitched over with the pantograph, and then we'll go in and hand sew down anything that's left open. Yeah, which is,
yeah, and once it's washed and done, and
you can't ever even tell. Sometimes we were like, wait, where's that spot? Because we lose it,
right?
Because you don't see it. It once it's all said and done, like I said, those little things disappear because you're just seeing the whole thing. And I think sometimes too, when you work so closely, like we're staring at the stitches, but then you forget to step back and go, oh yeah, look at this whole thing.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I was like, last night I was staring at that quilt in little spots. I'm like, oh, this corner, oh, this seam. And you're like, it's fine. I was like, are you sure? I might light this thing on fire. But yeah, again, now that it's done, I'm like, I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at the whole thing. And we were taking pictures of it this morning, and in the morning sunshine, which was so nice. But I was like, okay, calm down. It's fine. Yeah, it turned out really good. But anyway, okay. So borders. Do your borders right, okay? Thank you. In the same, like, not same, but yeah, like sashing, same thing. It's like,
yep.
If you're going to stick fabric along the sides of a block or a quilt, like.
No, that's the thing. That's the one thing with quilting is your measurements have to be spot on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're doing 1/4 inch seams, so you're off 1/8 of an inch, and a couple blocks later, nothing's lining up, and it's, I mean, trust me, I've had to redo blocks before, and you're just like, oh my God.
I've had to rip a whole set of blocks apart because that was just sewn wrong, but then I was like, well, now I can redo my seam allowance and, like, sew them better, and then I did, and I was like, oh, these actually are working way better in the whole quilt, and so it was kind of a blessing and a curse. Not a curse, but like a pain in the ass for sure, but thankfully my friends whipped out their seam rippers and helped me. I was like, guys, there's 24 of these. They were like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah, math and quilting are, it's so important.
Right?
And having the right tools and the rulers, and that you've got to cut them. There's a reason.
Yeah.
Promise. You look at those patterns and you're like, oh my gosh. Like, I don't even get this.
Yeah.
And so, now, granted, sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah.
I did a quilt a couple weeks ago and I was like, this literally, I'm doing the math in my head and I'm like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, this doesn't add up.
Measured, nope. And I ended up having to go back and recut some strips because, no, the pattern's wrong because there's no way this and this don't make this.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you're sewing this
you're
strip
like,
and then
B
this strip.
does not equal C, actually.
10 and 3 does not make 16. It just doesn't. So, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes it's a process. Always buy extra material.
Always. Yeah. The good thing about most patterns, like,
they've been tested.
Produced, they've been tested. Like, I've tested 3 patterns now. And there's multiple of us like poring over the pattern itself and asking questions and looking through the measurements and trying to make sure that everything makes sense. And so hopefully if a pattern is being put out for sale by its creator, it has been tested and put through multiple people's eyes and, you know, hands as far as making it. But and they'll include extra just so they know, and you're like, okay, well, what if the fabric that they choose is only 40 inches wide versus 44? Because some of them you can really, the manufacturers make them wider, so you can get more. And like, I just had to do that with a pattern I'm working on right now. I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense. I don't need this many strips, because I was mathing it out, and I think the more you do it, the more comfortable that gets. Because you are experienced with like, well, I can get this many squares out of this length of fabric. I don't need these 4 extra strips to cut. So then it's like, you're grateful that you had the extra, but also you don't always need everything that comes with it. But yeah, definitely making sure to buy extra, especially if you're like kind of making up your own thing too, is like, which we do a lot.
Or you end up on Etsy buying fabric at $25, $30 a yard because you desperately need
at midnight
another half a yard of something to finish.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I'm like, I gotta go to the quilt shop. I don't have enough. Like,
and then you buy, oh my God. Anyway, I have a problem.
It's fine.
I have a fabric obsession a little bit. It's fine.
It's fine. It's all fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. You know, here's the thing. We have a great skill. If there happens to be an apocalypse, we'll be really warm. People will be coming to us to help them.
Some blankets.
Yeah. Like, can I just have that? And we'll be like, no, sorry.
Yeah.
Just kidding. But it's fine. Yeah, I think, definitely making sure you have extra fabric is also... Because also, if you make a mistake, and you even sometimes that extra, you're like, well, I ruined that because I cut it too big, and now I don't have enough extra to, like, make up for whatever. Yeah, there's been a few jaunts to back to the fabric store to get more fabric, but yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, I'm gonna ask you some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
We ask everybody.
Ready. Okay.
Do you sew over your pins?
Nope.
Never. I've stopped because everybody says no.
Okay. I have those really super thin pins with the blue heads.
Yeah.
I will sew over those because they're so tiny.
Yeah.
But usually, no, I always pull my pins out.
Okay.
Because I have my little metal bowl next to my sewing machine. I just
plunk them in there.
I don't know. It just freaks me out.
Yeah, it is great. I've stopped doing it as much because I'm like, well, I'm going to break this sewing machine probably. There are times where I leave it in because I really need that seam to stay right there.
Right. And I'll be very careful sewing over it. But
yeah, I like go really slow
yeah.
to like, so it's not like jamming into it or,
right.
you know, hitting the needle. But yeah, I've started pulling my pins out more.
Good.
I'm like, I probably shouldn't risk this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you a thread snipper? Like, do you snip threads off the backs of your quilts along the way, or do you just say,
Depends.
Yeah.
Depends on the fabrics. If there's white fabric in it, yes. As I don't want to see those threads.
Yeah.
I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
Depends. It depends. Depends what it is.
Yeah.
If it's light fabrics, I definitely do.
Yeah. I'm always along the way. You probably see me. I always have my snips in my hands because I like can't stand it.
Yeah.
I'm like, gotta get it off.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I think it just depends on the fabrics, and if it's all dark, then you're not going to see it anyway.
Yeah. A lot of times I will when I'm ironing. Like
yeah.
I'll snip them, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you iron your seams open?
No.
No? Always
unless, because I was taught not to.
Oh, okay.
Because it can pull.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's like there's like a lot of seams in one spot.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I will, but no, I usually press them to the side.
Okay. I don't know why I got into the habit of pressing everything open.
Yeah.
But it's like become such a habit now that like I start to do it even in times when I don't mean to because I'm trying to nest the seams in a block or something.
Yeah.
And I'll start to do it open. I'm like, no. So then I have to like go back and press it to the side. But yeah, I don't know. And it's not like it's, yeah, like you said, it's not necessary. And sometimes it does kind of pull the seam open a little bit and you're like, wait, no, close back up. But
yeah, I just feel like it keeps the integrity of the quilt because now you've got it, to one side and then you're stitching over it and it just kind of holds it together. I don't know.
It solidifies that.
Maybe that doesn't make any sense, but that's how I do it. And I find it's easier like when you're doing your blocks or whatever, you've got one seam pressed one way, one seam pressed the other way, and it's really easy to line it up.
To nest those, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been finding that too. And I don't know why, like I said, I don't know why I started pressing open. But yeah, trying to match up seams it's okay, but like it's way easier if they're, like you said, pressed one way versus and the other, and then you can just stick them right together.
Yeah.
Because they just fit together.
Mm-hmm.
Versus trying to like line it up perfectly, but
yeah.
That's good. Well, yeah.
That's how I do that, yeah.
I love it. Do you have anything else you want to bring up or anything you want to share with our listeners?
Just your borders.
Just do your borders right.
Do your borders.
Mama Sweet Pea will be happy.
Measure your borders.
Yeah. Do it.
Well, I don't think so. I think, yeah, okay. Just living the fabric dream over here.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me today, Mommy.
You.
I love you.
Love you too.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.